Oh, good evening, Internet. Welcome to a bonus episode of the Comic Watchers Show. It's number 306, coming to you from Chad and Matt. As ever, Chad, how are you this week?
Yeah, hanging in there as best I
Okay.
can.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you on that. It's like 30 to 35 degrees hotter than it should be in Oklahoma right now. So that's a major downer right now for us because it should be like 60 or whatever, but it's instead of like 90. So
Oh, wow.
not okay. Our guest this week is the one and only, don't call him a translator, Zack Davisson from Ultimate X-Men. That's right. We've got the Ultimate X-Men debrief for you tonight. Zack, welcome to our show.
Thanks, and I'm glad to hear that you guys have the heat because it's about 30 degrees colder than it should be here.
Oh, no.
Seattle's never really known for its spring, but man, it just snowed a couple of days ago, and it's like, wow. But oh well, that's how it goes. And as you guys may notice, currently walking home, I timed my light rail a little badly, but when I get to my house, I'll switch over to my computer. But until then, here we are. Thanks for having me on. I think it's the whole, and this is something I'm sure we'll talk into, but the thing is that hey, I'm a translator. I just don't translate Ultimate X-Men. I think that's really one of those things in this industry is that because I do two things, people don't really like it when you do two things, right? They want you to just do one thing, and then they can know you. Otherwise, they have to figure out which of the two jobs you're doing on any specific book, and that creates a little confusion for them. But so I am a translator, just not for Ultimate X-Men.
Okay. Well, that's not confusing at all.
I know, right? As I always tell people, the easiest thing to do is just look in the credits. If my credit says translator, then I translated the book. If the credit doesn't say translator, then I didn't translate the book.
Absolutely. So with all of that in mind, what was your specific role for Peach Momoko's recently wrapped Ultimate X-Men run?
So what I did on the book is what's called a script adapter. And that role is pretty common. It's not as common nowadays, but it used to be really common in the manga industry as well. Kelly Sue DeConnick, for example, got her start as a script adapter for manga. There's quite a few writers that have done that role. And basically what happens is that you have someone who's the actual translator who produces what's called a raw translation. So they will just give you basically just like the script in Japanese. And then your job is to sort of take that. And the script adapter has gone by a couple different names. A rewriter is another name that's been called. And so your job is then to rewrite the script, essentially. And my role with Peach is kind of unique. I mean, I don't do what a traditional script adapter does, but when I worked on, we've always had a tough time sort of like figuring out my title. On Demon Days, I was co-scripter, and then at one time I was just listed as dialogue, and it's bounced back and forth. But we both were pretty happy with script adapter as the title because that's what I do. But I did not realize that was going to cause so much confusion. But once it was out there, it was out there. I do think it's funny that so many people kept calling me the translator when all you have to do is flip open the book and look at my credits and see that it doesn't say translator. But people just kept, inserting that mentally for some reason. Oh, got to cross the street. Don't want to die.
Please don't die on our show or at all.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be bad. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, that's essentially what I do. I think there's a lot of different ways to describe it. I mean, think of what an inker does to a penciler. Think of just because I mean, obviously, Peach is like the story, everything about Ultimate X-Men is entirely the plot, all that's Peach's, and then I just try to, with the dialogue, sort of bring out what she has there, so that it's more, as well as just sort of like developing some of the personality types of some of the characters, their modes of speaking, their methods of talking, and things like that. I try to develop that a little bit more, and then just help sort of bring Peach's story alive in a way. But it's definitely, it's an assisting role. I give her a boost. I add a little flourish to what she's already done.
So before we talk a little more about the Ultimate X-Men, tell us a little bit about your comic book origin.
My comic book what? Origin?
Origin.
I mean, I've been reading comics my whole life. Like, I don't think there's ever been a time where I haven't been a comics fan, and I've done pretty much everything in comics that you could possibly imagine. Well, except for draw them because I'm really bad at artists. But yeah, I collected and read comics my whole life. I mean, as I tell people, it's like if you want to know how much of a comic guy I am, I have a complete run of X-Men from number 1 to 350. I have my X-Men number 1 is signed by Stan Lee. X-Men were always my jams as a kid. Like X-Men and Conan were kind of my main ones, and then mostly Marvel, Defenders. I liked Avengers. I was like the team books. I never really liked the solo ones that much. I never read Spider-Man. I never really read Captain America or Thor, but I read a lot of the team books. And mostly because I like the character dynamics. I think I always enjoyed that part the most, is the character relationships. And then, so like I said, I read comics forever. Sometime in around the 90s, I had worked at a comic shop, and the owner decided to retire. So I took over the shop, and I owned my own comic shop for a while. From there, I've moved around. I've come back. I started working for a comics website called Comics Bulletin, doing reviews during comic writings, things like that. And that kind of just sort of cascaded into me getting contacts and meeting people that actually make comics and just sort of thinking, I could do this too, And that's when I decided to sort of switch, as we say, from one side of the table to the next. So It was really...
Uh-oh.
And speaking of Swiss,
I didn't do any of it by myself. I've had people there helping me all along the way. Tony Harris was a big influence for me. He was one of the first people who sort of like talked to me about it and was like, hey, comics people, they're just people. You could do this too. Dan Sakai was a big help to me, Yeah, that's basically the origin. I'm back at my house now. All right, I'm going to be weird here and set my phone down. You're going to look at my ceiling for a while while I get my computer hooked up. But Trust me, it'll be fine.
That's all right. We are masters of our domain, if nothing else.
Right?
So, how did you get paired with Peach for her book?
So, Peach, I met because Peach used to work or live in Portland, Oregon. And I met her for the first time in Oregon at a convention called Rose City Comic Con. And she was just sitting there at her little booth, with her little self-published comic. And I thought, I was just walking by one time. I thought her stuff was awesome. I thought, wow, this is someone who's extremely talented. And just started talking to her. And we exchanged, exchanged cards, did all that sort of stuff. And hold on, I think I'm almost actually online here. Let's see how it'll deal with two people logging in. Hello. Boom, 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 boom. Is it working? I did my name again.
Feel free to log off.
So,
if you want.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm actually getting into the studio. All right, I'm going to see you guys in the studio. Here we go. And we are. Boom.
There he is.
That was better than walking around the phone, right? Can you guys hear me?
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I have to switch headsets.
There we go.
And hold on a sec. Okay, now we all set?
Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah, so, I like I said, I got to do Peach from there, and she, as I often tell people are always like, oh, I would love to meet Peach Momoko. And I'm always like, were you at Emerald City Comic Con a few years ago? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, she was right there. You just didn't know who she was. You probably walked by her 1,000 times and ignored her because she hadn't really hit it yet, and that's just the way these things go in comics. You're always walking by in every artist alley at a convention. You're always walking by the person that you'll then stand in line 3 hours to meet at the next year, But I was really lucky. I think in just, creating a friendship with Peach. And then we had kept in touch for kept in touch for the years. She moved back to Japan, and we had often just sort of talked back and forth about maybe working on something. We had we thought we had this. It's kind of funny now to think about it because obviously since everything has happened since, but we had what was supposed to be like our big break, which is I had been in talks with Mike Mignola about, and I talked to him about this for a couple of years actually, about doing like a Hellboy in Japan series. And Mike was like, yeah, I think that would be great. Do you have an artist in mind for the series? And I just immediately thought, Peach Rocco, she's the one. She's the one that's going to do this. So I got Peach, Peach agreed to do it. She put together like some Hellboy sketches and stuff that we sent over to Mike Mignola. He was great. We were all happy. And the three of us were set to have a meeting at Emerald City Comic Con 2020. So COVID hits. Convention's canceled. Dream vanishes. I honestly thought that was it. I thought that was, both Peach and I were just like, that we had our chance. We'll never get it again. Who gets two chances in life? Nobody. You get your one chance. We were supposed to have this meeting, the three of us, Mike, Peach, and me. Hellboy was going to be Hellboy in Japan was going to be the breakout book, the thing that finally made our names, as it is. And then COVID just, took all of that away. And yeah, that was, and then, through other circumstances, Peach caught the eye of C.B. Cebulski, the head of Marvel, and he saw something really, and C.B. Cebulski himself, like I've got a lot of respect for him. We were both on this thing called the JET program, so we both lived in Japan. Both speak Japanese, but he just, he saw something in Peach that had a lot of potential, so he brought her into Marvel. And then he also brought me into Marvel to work as a pair with Peach, which was really one of the funniest days of my life. I remember waking up one morning and checking Gmail and seeing that I got an email from C.B. Cebulski asking me to come work for Marvel. And I thought 100% it was a scam. I was like, There's no way that this is real. So I'm like checking the email address on the internet, all this other stuff. Finally I wrote him back and we had a phone call and that was it. Peach and I were a team now at Marvel.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. We worked on the first Demon Days. That was amazing. And then, Demon Wars. And like when you're doing this kind of stuff, you never really know if it's the beginning or the end of something. There's a lot of people who get their first job at Marvel and it's their only job at Marvel. Because that's just how these things work. So I never knew if Peach and I would ever do another comic again. I never knew if we would ever work together again, or at least not at Marvel. And then, once again, the Ultimate Universe comes in and here we are in Ultimate Universe. And so I got to do 2 years working on the X-Men, which is just still a dream come true. Like the fact that I got to work on the X-Men for 2 years, it just amazes me every single day. I would love getting up in the morning and just going down and saying like, I'm going to go work on the X-Men. It still makes me happy. Loved it. Yeah, great experience. I'm really proud of the work we did. I think it's a beautiful book, and yeah.
Yeah, you should be proud. It is an incredibly unique book, and everyone involved with it should be patting themselves on the back because, I can even say 5 years ago, would Marvel have published a book that looked and read like this volume of Ultimate X-Men? And the answer is unequivocally no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really, and it was a big risk that Marvel took. I didn't know what was going to happen. I remember working on the first issue, and I'm just like, we are doing the X-Men without the X-Men. Oh my gosh, what are people going to think? And it was funny because, like Peach didn't realize that it was a particularly big risk because she's never been like a comic reader. She wasn't someone like me that grew up with comics deep in her DNA. So, I remember talking to Peach and she was just like, she said she didn't really think that the characters of the X-Men mattered, so she didn't think anyone would care. She thought X-Men was a thematical book. She's like, it's not like Spider-Man where there's Spider-Man, and they're just like, from her point of view, there was just a ton of X-Men, because she didn't really know any of them specifically. So she's just looking at this cast of hundreds of people and she's picking a few that she likes to be in the book. And she didn't really think that any of the characters individually mattered. She thought that the X-Men was more of a thematical book. So she was a bit surprised when reviews came out for the first title and, realizing that people actually had a cemented idea in their head of what the X-Men were. And I think that's, a lot of what makes it unique is just the fact that you had someone that didn't, like I said, didn't grow up with this comics DNA, and so was able to do something brand new with it because she didn't know she was doing something brand new.
Did you, you being an X-Men fan, did you kind of did you help her out, understanding how the X-Men are?
Oh yeah, I mean, I always have done that ever since Demon days. Like one of our editor, Lindsay, she used to say, Peach makes comics, Zack makes them Marvel comics. Because I would, I marvelized them in a way. Like I remember putting in, we had a thing in Demon days where I put in a BAMF sound effect for our Nightcrawler, and Pete's like, "What the hell is this?" And I'm like, "It's BAMF." Nightcrawler goes BAMF. She had no idea. And so I do that a lot. Like I try to sort of like, because I have a head catalog of a lot of Marvel, of X-Men stuff. So I do as much as possible of that. But all of it's done with Peach. Like when I will change or write new dialogue, then Peach and I will sort of workshop it back together. So we'll send it back and forth a lot, and we would get in a lot of arguments, and I would explain things to her, and I'd be like, well, this character is like sort of this, and she would like all that sort of thing. And eventually we would come together with a script that we were both happy on. But yeah, there's a lot of back and forth. Like every episode, I remember our editor, she would just be like, all right, so Zach, if you could finish the script by Monday, and then I'll give you and Peach a week to fight, and maybe we'll have it ready by Friday. So.
Well, surely, as collaborative as it would have had to have been for 24 issues, I mean, surely it wasn't a fight.
Well, yeah, fighting in a gentle way. I think it's because, I think Peach and I, as I told Peach often, and she would say the same thing, is like, I respect her too much other than to give her 100%. And so that meant that I gave her, everything that I thought would be the best for the issue. And that's where we would have the back and forth and the conversation, and then there was always stuff that I thought would work better. And there was stuff that a lot of it had to do with, she would prefer the art to carry the story without much dialogue. Like that's how Peach, like her first comics that she did before her self-published stuff was for the most part dialogueless. So she likes doing silent comics. So there I am, jumping in, filling the panels with exposition, with all this other stuff. And she would, we would have to have a conversation about why that was important from a reader's perspective. Also, a lot of it just from the Japanese perspective, because she would put stuff in there that she thought was common knowledge. And I would say, well, actually, American readers don't know this. So we need to have at least like a little bit of a character explanation of something that was going on. And that's how we ended up doing the little things in the back, the little lexicons. Because that way we didn't have to have the characters actually speaking exposition text. So that was kind of the compromise that we came with there. And I was really glad we did, because I thought it turned out really great. Yeah.
And she knew that you were into fencing, right? And
oh yeah. But yeah. But it's definitely an interesting process. Like I said, I knew that I felt like from the first issue, readers were either going to love it or hate it, and I was right. They pretty much either love it or hate it. You don't see a lot of neutral opinions on it, but way more loved it than hated it, which am really happy about.
Well, I can imagine it's probably more of the old guard that grumbled about it, but I mean, not every comic is for everybody, right?
Yeah.
That just goes without saying. But when you have as large of a departure from what's quote unquote expected, as this volume of Ultimate X-Men was, yeah, I can definitely see where very heated binary response would come about.
Oh yeah, I used to see all these I'm sorry, but I love seeing what people would say about our issues. So I would always troll and look at it. And I kept seeing people, especially in the early issues, 3 or 5, I bet next issue the actual X-Men will appear. I bet next issue Wolverine will be there, or Cyclops or something. And I was just like, nope, they're never coming. Sorry, yeah. I would say that online to people. I was like, this is the story, if you're on board with the story, but don't expect the story to suddenly radically become something different or something traditional. If you haven't figured it out by now, that's not going to happen. But I think, like you said, eventually those people faded off and stopped reading it, and we were left with the people who were really enjoying it. And the people enjoyed it immensely, and I thought that was fantastic.
did you guys know going into the series that it was going to be 24 issues and leading into Endgame and all that?
Yep. Since issue 1, it was a plan of 24 issues. So the series as written is exactly as planned. I mean, but once again, like when you're working with Marvel, there's always changes that can be made. I mean, you never know. I mean, you never know for certain. Marvel could suddenly say like, "Hey, do you want to do 36? You know, or your series sucks. We're going to cut you off." You know, I've had friends that work for Marvel and they were hired for 24 issues and they didn't make it past 5. So, you know, you never know what's going to happen. But on the day I was hired, you know, and the day Preach and I, you know, sort of got the story outlined, it was always going to be 24 issues, which was the whole selling point of the Marvel issues was 2 years in real time. So each issue was 1 month. Yeah, but we had no plan beyond issue 24.
You feel pretty confident in how well it wrapped up?
Oh yeah, I love it. I think it wrapped up perfectly. Like I love the fact that we had a non-traditional series and it had a non-traditional ending. I feel like if somehow we had given it just this pat little comic book ending, it would have kind of betrayed a little bit what we've been doing with the rest of the series. You know, I felt like, you know, I really love the way it ended. Like when I was seeing that from Peach, I was just like, because then, you know, I got issue 23 done, and I was just like, well, we just finished the story and we still have 1 more issue to go, you know. But yeah, so I loved it. I loved the sort of vagueness of the ending. You know, Peach wanted a sort of ending that felt like life, you know, because life doesn't end easily. Life doesn't, you know, you don't just, in real life, the screen doesn't roll, the credits don't roll, and then the story ends. You know, real life, when something finishes, you just, you know, the rest of the world carries on. And so she kind of wanted that sensation with the last issue, and I thought it was really well achieved.
Right on.
Yeah.
Was there a character that you became attached to as you were working on it, or one that maybe you didn't like at the beginning, but you know, at issue 20 or so, you're like,
oh no, I mean, I fell in love with I have my favorites. Like there's no question. Like Nico Moro was absolutely my favorite. Like Nico Moro got all my best dialogue, you know, because I just loved her so much. Yeah, she was a lot of fun. I just loved Nico. I loved Mori. Mori was like just, I loved little Mori and her little hat there and everything, and I thought she was fantastic. Those 2 were probably my favorite. My favorite scene to write dialogue wise was the battle between Surge and Nico Moro, because I had given them both such distinct vocal styles. So it was actually, I got to play them off as sort of fighting with words as well as fighting with the language. Yeah, Surge was another one. I really loved Surge. I thought she was fantastic. Kageyama, I don't think I loved as much in the beginning, but I learned to love him better. I learned to sort of like figure out how to write his dialogue a little bit better, I think.
I was going to say, was there somebody that you struggled to kind of find the voice for?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kageyama was probably the main one I struggled to find a voice for, because at the beginning he was just kind of an entity. You know, he didn't have a lot of personality to him, and the personality and motivation sort of like came out later. And that's also pretty typical of the way Peach works. Like Peach works sort of intuitively and spontaneously. Like she doesn't actually create a script or anything. She creates like an outline, and then she literally sits down on a comic page and she draws the issue page by page, and that's how she builds the story. Stan Sakai does it the exact same way. You know, where they just sit there and they don't have the story planned out. Maybe they have a vague outline, but they really create the story as they go, page by page. And there'll be times where Peach has gotten to like page 15 and she decides that she doesn't really, or she changes her mind about something, so she'll just trash all the pages that she's done up until then and just go back to start and redraw the stories, because she doesn't do scripts. But yeah, and so like, you know, like with some of the earlier characters, it did take me a while to just sort of figure them out, you know, and find their voices. And I think that's true of almost everything you do. It's hard to have someone like fully formed. I think May was the only character that was really like fully formed from page 1. And Nico Moro, because I love Nico Moro. Like I fell in love with her.
Now back up just a hair, because I swear you just said that Peach Momoko does not work from script.
Yes, she does not.
Can you break that down a little bit and how that works for you?
Sure. So she will do she does her outlines, or the nemu as it's called in Japanese, which is basically thumbnailed pages. And so she starts doing all the thumbnailed pages. And when she has all the issues done, her husband Yo, who actually is her translator, not me, husband Yo will actually basically send me Peach's rough pages along with sort of a outline of the story, as well as Peach's sort of rough dialogue script from that. And then what my job is then to take that and create a traditional Marvel script. So I will do. I often like talk about it's like the way that Jack Kirby and Stan Lee work together, and that basically Jack Kirby would do 90% of the work and then pass it off to Stan to scribble down the dialogue, and that's kind of the same way it worked. And so I would take Yo's raw translation, and then I would basically go into Word and create a full formal script that could then be passed off to a letterer. And Peach and I would work. Then when I created the full formal script, like that's Peach and I would work that one back and forth and everything until we were happy, and then we would send it over to the editors. But yeah, I would like I said, I would just get sort of her rough stuff, and then I would write the script from that.
Very interesting.
Now, are you guys, as Endgame kind of wraps things up, are you guys kind of shepherding the X-Men's involvement in there, or is that all Dennis?
No, that's all. Yeah, our job is done. We're both on the different new projects now. So I know Peach, like, had some meetings with them and talked to folks about what she thought, but ultimately, when it's passed off to the next writer, that's the new writer's job. That's their world now and their characters, and that's just the way it works at Marvel. When you're working in, I guess not just at Marvel, when you're working in a shared universe, I can't say that it's not a little hard emotionally to see other writers writing our characters that have been our children for 2 years. But I mean, I'm good friends with a lot of other comic writers, and like I'm good friends with G. Willow Wilson, and she was just like, we had like a talk, and my friend Jim Zub as well. We had like a talk, and they're just like, it reminds me. I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Buster Scaggs? There's this great scene where he's being hung by a rope, and he looks at the guy next to him who's also about to be hung, and he goes, "First time," and that's always the joke that plays through my head, because it was my first time going through this process of having created something and then handing it off to another person who can then do with it what they will. So yeah. I actually haven't read any of Endgame. I feel like I'm still too emotionally involved. I need distance, and then maybe when it's over, I'll go back and read it. But for right now, I'm still too in love with our characters, and still too in love with the characters we created to I can't watch my girlfriend make out with another guy quite yet, and that sort of thing. Obviously not in that manner, but just like that's sort of like when you're emotionally attached to someone and something and see it pass off to someone else. I think they'll do a great job. I think everyone that I've seen do the work with the rest of our characters, what I've seen, has done an amazing job. But still, there's attachments. I can't deny that.
Sure.
So I'm excited. I'm excited to read it all when it all comes out and to see what happens, see what the final resolution is.
So do you have? So you've mentioned the quote unquote the next projects. Is your next project with Peach? Do you have something else lined up? Or are you dipping?
No, I have. I've been writing. So I really wanted to get into writing my own comics as well. And so I wrote a Savage Sword of Conan story. And then I published a couple things in Savage Sword of Conan that I wrote, working with my artist friend Ben Dewey, who's just absolutely amazing. I'm also working on another project right now that I'm not really allowed to talk about. So, but it's really cool. And then I also write nonfiction books. So I'm writing a new nonfiction book as well, because I write nonfiction books on Japanese folklore.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I'm writing one on kitsune right now, on Japanese magic foxes, and then I still keep up on translation work as well. So I've kind of throttled back a lot of my translation work just to the people that I really like. So I will always work on Gotanabe stuff for Dark Horse. I'll always work on the Mizuki Shigeru stuff for Drawn and Quarterly, the Wataru Nadatani stuff. So yeah.
I see you're a big H.P. Lovecraft fan, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. All lifelong. Absolutely. I've been reading Lovecraft since I was way too young. Like, as I tell people, I'm a Gen X kid. Parents didn't give any shit. So they were just like, hey, 8-year-old kid, you want to read Lovecraft? Here you go. So, yeah.
Do you have a favorite story that
I think my favorite Lovecraft story is The Music of Eric Zahn. I really like that. I love it's very just atmospheric, and I enjoy it very much. I like a lot of Lovecraft's smaller stories. I think those are the ones that the Cats of Ulthar are fantastic. I mean, the big famous stories too are all great. You can't go wrong with Call of Cthulhu. You can't go wrong with the Dunwich Horror. Those sort of things. But yeah, The Music of Eric Zahn is probably my favorite. I kind of like the ones without monsters, which is weird to say for Lovecraft because that's what he's, that's what he's most famous for. But
have you had a chance to check out The Thing on the Doorstep by Simon Burks?
No, I haven't. Is that a comic or?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I have not actually. I've read a couple Lovecraft comics, but I don't know. I'm biased. I like ghost stuff. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Go Tanabe is also a good friend of mine. I was just hanging out with him last weekend, so which is always good. It's great to make comics, and it's even better to make comics with your friends, as I always say. So yeah, I love his work on Lovecraft. I think that what he's done has been, and he's another one. I think that it's like Peach with the X-Men. Is there's a certain interesting perspective that can only be brought by an outsider, by someone who didn't grow up in that culture and has no baggage attached to it whatsoever. Like Tanabe was not kind of like, now that I'm drawing parallels here that I didn't even know existed, Tanabe was not a Lovecraft fan. Just like Peach really was not, Peach never dreamed her whole life to work on the X-Men. It was just an assignment that was given to her or offered to her. And Go Tanabe, as an artist, he was phenomenal, but he wasn't really great at writing his own stories. So one day his editor, who was a Lovecraft fan, suggested to Go that, why don't you try adapting this story? That way you could do all the art of it, but you don't have to actually think of the story. If you're just doing adaptations, maybe that will work better for you. And so Go did his first story, The Outsider, and that was just the magic that clicked for him. Adapting other works was what he needed to do. So he adapted quite a few other people's works. He adapted like a story by Chekhov. He adapted a couple of French writers' stories, and he adapted a couple of these other stories. But then it was really the Lovecraft that sort of resonated with him the most and was most popular with the readers. So then he just started focusing on Lovecraft. And I think, like I said, I think what he brings to them is that I think a lot of Western readers, when they approach Lovecraft, they try to fix him. They try to somehow fix Lovecraft as if Lovecraft was broken. And Go Tanabe does not approach Lovecraft as something he's broken. He just creates the story as written, as Lovecraft wrote it, which is fascinating and really interesting to work on. And I just think he has an amazing sense of pacing. He has an amazing sense of tension that he builds into these pages. Yeah, and doing the translation for them is easily the most labor-intensive translation that I do, because with my first book, I had to figure out the fact that I'm not translating H.P. Lovecraft. I'm translating Go Tanabe. So what he does on the page has to take precedence over what Lovecraft wrote, because that's who I'm translating, is Go Tanabe. So I'll take the English version of the Lovecraft story. I'll take the Japanese version of the exact same story. Then I'll take Go's manga, and all through I'll cross-reference those three. So if he uses a phrase that directly comes from the Lovecraft, from the Japanese version of the Lovecraft, I'll directly put Lovecraft's own words in there. And then it's also my job to sort of sew that all together so that it reads seamlessly, as if Lovecraft originally wrote it. Which I found out just this weekend is not something that all of Go Tanabe's other translators do. Because I read someone who was talking about the French edition. And I'm like, do they do that in the French edition? And he's like, nah. They just, it just reads like standard French. It doesn't read like Lovecraftian words or anything like that. So I'm like, yes, I'm doing a better job.
Well, it's because you enjoy the material and want to see it, presented in the best light.
Yeah, I enjoy the material, and I want, like I said, Go is a good friend. I want to make sure that I represent him as well. And it's just like I do with Peach. When I'm working with something, I owe the person that created the book nothing less than the very best I have to give. Even if that takes more time, even if it's more an intensive process. I mean, I could do it a lot faster if I didn't work that way. But ultimately, the book is going to be out there for hopefully tens of 20s of years, and I want it to be the very best I could do.
Right on.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, a couple of our contributors had some questions. If you want to pull those up.
Yeah, let me do that real quick. Absolutely. Great idea. So, okay, so as far as narrative goes, what was the creative process for Ultimate X-Men?
So the narrative is entirely Peach. Like, I have nothing. I mean, I will give suggestions to Peach, but ultimately that's entirely her. So and none of us really know what Peach is going to do. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing. Like, she will just, we're like, I'll talk to her husband, I'll talk to the editors, and we're just like, well, I guess we'll find out, I mean, because she's just such an intuitive creator that until we actually get the rough draft from Peach, none of us knows what's going to happen. And it's, Peach is the entirely driving the narrative by herself. And I'm always amazed by it. Every issue I'll get it, I'm just like, wow, okay, I guess that's what we're doing. Yeah. I mean, and some of it is like, because I know Peach well enough, like Peach has always been primarily a horror writer or a horror artist. That's something I think a lot of people don't know about Peach, is that when she first was doing her own work, like when I first met her, her stuff was all just black. It was all black and white. It was all very graphic, very, very graphic horror. Like, Peach did a series that was considered to be unprintable by Heavy Metal magazine, and they rejected it because they said it was absolutely unprintable. So, like, when I met her, actually I have it right now. So this is her little self-published comic that I bought. It's a flip book, so it has the artist Shintaro Kago on one side and a Peach Momoko story on the other side. But so I knew that she was going to do sort of a horror stuff. I kind of vaguely knew that, but it was always a surprise every issue. And every issue I was like, wow, Peach, they are not going to let you do that. And then they let her do it every single time. I was just like, she only found a boundary once that Marvel would not let her do. And this was in our Venom Black, White, and Red story that was later printed in Marvel Rivals. And I'll never forget the editor coming back and saying, Peach, you cannot have Venom eat a baby. I'm sorry. There's a line that cannot be crossed. And that's it right there. Venom cannot eat a baby. Yeah, that's the line. So we finally found the line. But yeah, she would put stuff in there that I was just like, there's no way. But they always did. Marvel essentially gave Peach a blank check to do anything that she wanted to. There was very, very rarely any editorial. I mean, there was zero editorial interference, and there was very even rarely any editorial suggestions.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, when you talk about the fact that, Marvel is just so big, it's got lots of corporate gods it has to appease. I mean, that level of creative freedom is very unprecedented.
Oh my God, yeah, it's amazing. Like, and it's, I've talked to a lot of my other friends that work for Marvel, and they didn't get that level of creative freedom. It's something that was just sort of reserved for Peach Momoko for whatever reason. I think of it just like, there's a line from the musical Evita where it says, when the money keeps rolling in, you don't ask any questions. And I think that's kind of how Marvel was like, it was like, hey, you know what? As long as she's really successful, we're not going to bother with that, and so they just, let us do pretty much anything we wanted, which was crazy.
Now, are you helping out with Psy? What is it, Psy?
No, she wanted, like, I know when we ended Demon Days, or Ultimate X-Men, like, we've been together for 2 years, and I think that's like, both of us were like, all right, because we know we just done the series before that, so like, all right, it's kind of like break time. And then she wanted to work with some other writers, and she wanted to work with Stan Sakai, and I'm like, well, can't fault that, I want to work with Stan Sakai too, if I got to be replaced by someone, it's nice to be replaced by one of the best. So yeah. So I haven't done any stuff on Dimension Rivals. I've been, like I said, I've been moving over to doing my own writing. I mean, if the time came and Peach wanted to work together with me again, I would do it in an absolute heartbeat. I mean, I love her. I think she's one of the most amazing people working in comics right now, and I would happily support her in whatever she wanted me to.
Are there any other characters in Marvel or say DC that you think that you guys could kind of do what you did with Ultimate X-Men?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say because like I wouldn't have picked the X-Men as a series that Peach would be really awesome at. Like that would not have, like it's hard to say what sort of attracts her. The one, like I did, like me personally, I also did, not with Peach, but I did another Marvel title for Edge of the Spider-Verse where I did a one-page character called Scarlet Spider, and I had always kind of hoped that she would grow into something else, but unfortunately she didn't. But if we could ever do Scarlet Spider, that would be cool because I always liked Scarlet Spider, or Sakura Spider. Sorry, Sakura Spider, not Scarlet Spider. She was Sakura Spider. Yeah, yeah. I mean, but I'm a Marvel guy, so I absolutely adore Marvel. I think Peach would do an awesome Hulk. I think she would she really likes stuff that's visceral, that's sort of like tangible. I think she really gets into that, and she also loves eyeballs. So anyone that can pop out eyeballs, she loves a good eyeball.
Yeah, I know that Miles Morales horror cover she did with the eyeballs just still haunts me to this day.
Oh yeah. Two things Peach always loves is, for whatever reason, she loves eyeballs and she loves suicide. So you're always going to get those in any sort of Peach thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, and it's also it's not as much of a taboo culturally. Like those are just different things that people get really, we get squicked out about it a little bit more. I remember one time it was really funny because she had posted this thing on her Twitter, which was this girl shooting herself in the face and an eyeball flying off. And she posted this picture, and all she posted was goodbye. And like everyone was like freaking out, thinking it was some kind of suicide note or something. I was just laughing, going, I'm like, no, that's just Peach, man. That's her idea of a good joke. She loves doing something. And she's doing cool stuff now. She just announced recently she's doing a self-published art book. So I'll be interested to see how much of her real horror gets to go into there.
Yeah.
Because she can get pretty gruesome, man. She can get really gruesome.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, we're used to seeing what we see at Marvel, but knowing that there's a whole other very dark side to Peach Momoko, it raises the bar a little bit.
Yeah, like when we were doing Demon Days, I would often laugh about that. I'm like, I wonder if all these people who love Peach, what they would think if they just truly saw Peach Momoko unleashed. If they saw the darkest of her dark side. It'll be interesting. I mean, I think I'm glad. Like she's established enough in her career, and obviously, she has the wherewithal now to start doing the stuff that she wants to do more and more. And I think that's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to whatever she does next.
Most definitely.
Well, kind of in that same vein, do you want to kind of do tonight's top 5?
Yeah.
All right, we're doing our top 5 X-Men, right?
Top 5 X-Men, buddy.
All right, hold on.
I'm not. I will say up front, I'm not a big X-Men person.
What? So, wait. Who are you a big person of then? Who's your favorite?
I'm more of a DC, Green Arrow, Batman.
Okay.
Street level stuff.
Yeah, Matt, are you an X-Men fan?
Oh baby, let's do it.
So my first is my beloved darling Kitty Pryde, who I will always love. This is my piece I have of Paul Smith by Kitty Pryde. So Kitty Pryde, I actually got to tell Chris Claremont this, and I was very happy to, is because when I first read her, I was exactly the right age to fall head over and heels with this cartoon girl, right? I was I think 13 when I first read X-Men, and this was back in the 80s. So the 80s, I don't know how old you guys are, but the 80s,
I'm up there.
The entertainment we got was pretty freaking, as I like to say, it was pretty neutered. you had He-Man running around, and he was just He-Man, and they just didn't do anything, And then I picked up the X-Men, and it was the first time that I had seen sort of like romance, that I'd seen all these emotional driven stories, and it was the kind of stuff that I had just never really seen before, any of the stuff that was presented to me, which is why it was so amazing when I found it. I found what Claremont was writing, and when I saw Kitty head over heels in love, I was just swooning, and I told Chris, I'm like, you didn't know it, but you were writing Chris, pretty Kitty Pryde exactly for me. And then, so she's just bar none my favorite. I will say though, like part of my problem with my favorite X-Men is I have not kept up with the X-Men. So I know whatever they're at now, I don't really know. I've tried reading some of the modern X-Men, but they're so far away from my X-Men that I don't really recognize them. And I think that's fine. I think everyone should be able to have their X-Men. They're not my X-Men, but that's 100% fine because I have mine and they'll always be there for me. And Kitty Pryde was just my absolute favorite. I loved everything about her. Love her. And then, of course, my second number one is Colossus because he was the one who got to kiss Kitty Pryde, and that was the main thing I liked about him. I just love, like, if I was put in charge of the X-Men, I realized everyone would hate me because I would instantly be like, all right, here we go. Kitty Pryde and Colossus are going to go on dates, and that's going to be the majority of the stories. And they're going to just have a little love story, and it'll be so beautiful. And everyone would hate me for it. But yeah, I love Colossus. I loved his, it's like visually he was great. I loved his story. I loved that he was that, that classic gentle giant. He was the painter. He had the heart of the poet and everything. But then he, at the same time, he turned into this giant metal monstrosity. That was another one of my favorite things when I met Chris Claremont. He talked to me in Colossus's voice, and that just made me so happy because I knew he would. Like all writers, when you do your characters, you have their voice. You can do it. It's one of the ways that we actually figure out if dialogue sounds good is by speaking it aloud. Because if you speak your dialogue aloud, it'll instantly tell you if it's weird in your ear. Stuff that looks fine on paper, if you actually say it out loud, it will, it will sound weird. So Chris Claremont talked to me in Colossus's voice. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Oh,
so I love Colossus. I love Kitty Pryde. Those are definitely my top two. My third one is the one that was a little weird, and he's a little bit of a deep cut, unless he's been brought back, which has always been possible. But I always loved Mimic, the character Cal Rankin. He appeared in the early Silver Age X-Men, and he could basically absorb other mutants' powers. And he was just visually great. Like he had the wings, he had the big beast feet. I thought he was a great character. He actually was killed off in the early series, but it's Marvel, so I'm sure they brought him back to life at some point.
He's come back at some point.
Yeah, he's got to come back at some point. I always loved Mimic. I'm just gonna go there because whatever. I'm basic. I love Wolverine. You can't not love Wolverine. I mean, Wolverine is just fantastic. I don't want to say Wolverine. It's like saying who's your favorite DC character. You're like, I like Batman. I'm like, yep. We sure do, but Wolverine is just an amazing character. And of course, I love Wolverine with Kitty Pryde. The Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, like that duo, is just one of my favorite series that I've done. That whole series also just had a huge impact on my life as I was reading them. Because I would later move to Japan and study Japanese and everything. A lot of my first immersion in Japanese culture came from those series that Chris Claremont and Paul Smith did, where Wolverine went to Japan and had the whole wedding thing, and So those just had a deep impact on my life, and Wolverine's cool. What can you do? He's awesome. And
for
then
my money, and I'm just going to briefly interject this. For my money, that's the best Wolverine story ever written.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I believe that Paul Smith was the greatest X-Men artist. I believe that that run is probably the best run of X-Men that they've ever done. And I really like that was, now I'm just telling Chris Claremont stories, but it was just when I got to meet him, it meant so much to me because he had meant so much to me. And I just remember him saying, he was like, because he would call Paul Smith, the artist, he would call him Smitty. And he was just like, if Smitty hadn't left, you could just see the sort of longing, because Paul Smith apparently quit mid-run to go ride a motorcycle across India, or so for whatever reason. So that's why the run ended. And it always sort of like you can tell that Chris could see all this lost potential of things that were going to happen in the future. And yeah, so yeah, Wolverine. And now number 5 is always tough because like you always have the first 4, but then like stuff like number 5, there's like 30 people tie for number 5, right? I mean, that's just the way it goes, because there's so many X-Men, and all of them are so very, very good. But I'm gonna go with an odd choice who's not really an X-Men, but I know he's joined the X-Men at least once or twice, which is Juggernaut. I just love Juggernaut. But I love Juggernaut when he's written a certain way. I love Juggernaut as the sort of loyal friend to Black Tom.
Yeah.
That's the Juggernaut I like. I like that, like a lot of his comics that when I was reading Juggernaut, like there's this great issue of the X-Men. Oh gosh, I'm gonna be really dorky and say I believe it's issue 178, but where so Jim Shooter, the editor-in-chief of Marvel, decided that Kitty Pryde and Wolverine couldn't date because he was 19 and she was like 14, and we didn't care about those things until all of a sudden we did care about them. And so he's like, we can't have these two. So we had to break them up. So they broke them up and had basically Peter cheat on Kitty with another girl. And it was all very sad, and I didn't like it. And nobody liked it. But then they had this one issue where Wolverine thought Peter had done Peter dirty. And so he was basically going to take him out to a bar and kick his ass. And that was Wolverine's plans. He's like, this boy did our girl bad, and he deserves a smackdown. And I'm going to give him a smackdown. And of course, the bar that they happen to pick, well, there's the Juggernaut also there having a beer. So he decides instead to let the Juggernaut give him a smackdown. And it's just such a great issue because of the personalities involved and everything. And after, Juggernaut gives Peter the required smackdown, at the end he just looks at Wolverine, he's like, we cool? And he's like, I got no beef with you. And he just walks away. And I love that. I love that scene. I love those and that's the X-Men I always really loved. Like the X-Men I loved so much was more like a soap opera. It was far more about the personalities. They would stop every now and then and they would play baseball. They would do all this sort of stuff. And then, and I liked that a lot. And I think that's when I stopped being interested in the X-Men, is when it stopped being about that sort of thing.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's your top 5, Matt?
Okay, number 1, I'm going with the Southern Belle herself, Rogue.
Rogue is amazing.
Rogue.
Oh my God, you can't go wrong with Rogue. Yeah,
you can't go wrong. I'm in Oklahoma, so I'm south adjacent.
Okay.
So I've got a special affinity for Southern Belle characters.
Yeah.
And also kick ass like Rogue does.
Speaking of Ultimate X-Men, like that's kind of funny because we brought in our Rogue sort of like parallel Futaba, and I slipped in some dialogue there for Rogue into Futaba's character, and I was allowed, like, they're like, you get a y'all, but you don't get a sugar. And so that was basically what I was told. Couldn't do any sugars. I threw in a couple of sugars, but they were just like, nope, we're not having the sugars. Yeah. But yeah, no, Rogue is the best.
Yes, she is. Number 2, I got to say Storm.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Storm's
who
amazing.
doesn't love the goddess?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Strong personality, and the when she broke bad and stabbed Callisto in their
my God,
tunnels.
So good.
And then, like, shortly thereafter, gave herself a mohawk. Like, that's that's Storm.
It's amazing. Yeah, she's an amazing character.
Great character work on Claremont's part. Number 3, I'm going to go with Laura Kinney.
I don't know who that is.
That is X-23.
Oh, okay. I love X-23. Okay,
Yeah.
I did. I read all of X-23, and like it was so good. She was so good, and then somehow another writer got a hold of her, and it just went to shit. And like she was this amazing character, and then I flipped 2 pages, and she's like a prostitute, and I'm like, what? Why? It was so bad. But her as a character is amazing. Oh, she's so good.
The Tom Taylor run that he did of that character, all new Wolverine, is just one of my favorite things ever.
Okay.
I read when I got the omnibus, I read the whole damn thing in one afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
Devoured it. She is awesome.
She's fantastic. Yes.
Okay, number 4 has got to be Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler? See,
Yeah.
I love Nightcrawler, but there's like 50 Nightcrawlers, right? With different personalities, and like I feel like you have to kind of pick your poison with Nightcrawler. Like, do you like the sort of like cavalier swashbuckler? Do you like the tortured Catholic Nightcrawler? I mean, what's your favorite there?
I mean, I think I like swashbuckler Kurt best.
Mm-hmm.
For
Yeah.
sure. I think that is him when he's projecting Errol Flynn. I think that's Kurt Wagner at his finest.
Nice. I like it.
Undiluted self.
Yes.
And then
that's one of those headcanons where I'm sorry, but I refuse to this day to believe that what's his name is actually Kurt's father. Like, no, that just doesn't work. I'm sorry.
Oh, they even did that.
Yeah. Oh, they did? Okay.
Yeah, they fixed that. It's okay.
Oh, good. I remember seeing that. I was like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Oh my god.
Yeah, it was not a good idea.
Yeah.
And then I'm kind of like you with number 5. I could go in a lot of different directions with number 5, but
Rogue could have been in my 5. I mean, like Nightcrawler, all of those. Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Cyclops. And
Cyclops is great.
The reason I'm going with Cyclops is he just like it's easy to write a bad version of Cyclops, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, he's stoic, and like that's just lame. There's a lot of that out there, unfortunately. But when you get right down to it, Scott Summers is a product of trauma, physical and emotional.
Yeah,
and he tamps it down as best he can behind the stoicism.
Mm-hmm.
And he, it's not like he's a berserker on the inside or whatever, but he's this injured little boy who watched his parents die.
Yep. I love Cyclops. Absolutely.
I love that notion about him and the fact that it's rarely explored.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the continuity around Cyclops and the entire Summers lineage has gotten so complicated. But at the end of the day, he's my guy.
He's so good. Like the concept of someone who has to keep their power in check constantly and can't let their guard down for even a second. I mean, I think that builds on his personality so well.
Yes.
I love him. All right. So, Chad, are you going to do your X-Men rundown?
Sure. I mean,
do it.
Do it.
Preface this is, mainly from the 90s animated series. So
okay.
Which I've never seen, so hey.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
man.
But because by the time the 90s hit, I just turned 21 and I had better things to do with my life than watch cartoons.
I got you.
And then I came back to watching them later, but there was definitely a span where I was like, nope, I'm going to go out to bars.
I get it.
Yep.
Now, you guys can tell me if he's in continuity, but Morph, he was always kind of, and it's an interesting one, who
Age of Apocalypse Morph?
The 90s.
Okay, the one from the 92 series.
Morph was in continuity in issue 39 through 41 of the original X-Men run, where he played a version of Charles Xavier that was then killed, and then of course later, but nobody knew that it was actually this shape-changing Morph guy, and so he really was just a convenient dead body at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Roy Thomas.
Yep. So he had a 3-issue run, and where he was called, I believe he was called Changeling at the time, but essentially the same character. I was glad to see that they brought him back, gave him a little dignity from his shameful 3-issue run.
Oh, he was, when I was 15, 16 years old, he was like one of my favorite things in the world of Age of Apocalypse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I remember reading the original Age of Apocalypse because my older brother collected the Marvel comics, and so we would order from a mail service, and I would the order would come to me, and I would read the comics before I gave them to him.
Nice, nice. So, all right, who's next in your countdown?
Yeah, I like Nightcrawler. He just seems like an interesting character. I mean, I've what I've read of him. I can't differentiate between the swashbuckling and the.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, sure, the tortured Catholic, yes.
But he's an interesting character. I am listening to the new Marvel What If series books, and The third one is what if Kitty Pryde stole the power of the Dark or the Phoenix?
Oh,
So
Interesting.
nice.
so it takes place in the 70s, I guess.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, not to get off track, but it's a kind of it's a connected series where America Chavez is like a watcher, and Doom is going through the multiverse trying to do what Doom does.
Do they all end badly? Because that was the point of the original What If series, is that every issue was supposed to end badly, and that told you that the version we have now is the best of all possible versions. That anything others would have ended badly is sort of how the old What If series went.
Well, I mean, they were the first one was what if Loki was worthy, and basically Thor is killed, and Loki's banished because he was part of the plan to not kill Thor, but kind of mess with him, and so eventually Thor or Loki becomes the bearer of the hammer. And the second one is what if Peter Parker and Wanda Maximoff were brother and sister, and basically
That's random.
That is super random, yeah.
What it was is like Peter Parker, his parents found Wanda on one of their missions, I guess, for S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever, and she grew up with him, and then Quicksilver's raised by Doom, and Quicksilver murders Captain America and frames Wanda.
Yeah. Peter Parker's parents being agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm never gonna like that. Sorry. That's always just no. I'm gonna pretend that never happened. All right, number three.
Number three.
I think I kind of like Sabretooth, because I remember when I was reading my brother's comics, it was when right before the Age of Apocalypse, when Wolverine lobotomizes him, and then it just kind of the universe shifts, and it's like, okay. And then when they came back, Sabretooth was supposedly good.
Yeah,
because
that was good stuff. That was great writing from Lobdell, because you didn't know for a long time, is Sabretooth faking it or is this legit?
Mm-hmm.
And he was faking it, but of course he was killed Psylocke. But yes, good times. All right, Chad, number 4.
But I mean, I like the how they play off, him and Rogue not being able to be together, and then
I believe they can now. Like that's a weird continuity thing. Yeah. But yeah. Oh no. Gambit is clearly the sexiest X-Men too. There's just he's great.
Yeah.
And he just randomly shows up in the Tom King, Jim Lee, Superman, Spider-Man story.
Nice.
Jim Lee got to draw Gambit again. Like that's the only reason that exists.
Oh yeah.
All right, Chad, last up, number 5.
Number 5. I kind of like Deadpool. I mean, I like the kind of breaking the fourth wall, kind of not taking things too seriously, and so yeah,
Okay.
Deadpool.
Okay.
Fair
enough. Yeah.
Although he seems to be a little, overused these days.
So I will tell you that I like Deadpool, but I've been in comics, and I've been working at comic conventions for a long time now. In fact, recently I just did Emerald City Comic Con, and I remember that I counted out. I'm like, wow, this is my 16th Emerald City Comic Con I've done, and there were a couple years there where every asshole on earth would dress in a Deadpool costume and come to a convention and be Deadpool in character. And it was just an endless parade of people giving themselves an excuse to be the worst possible version of themselves. Like, we're talking like hundreds of these guys, hundreds of Deadpools just walking around everywhere they go, like, and it was just like, so unfortunately that has soured me on Deadpool a little bit, but the movies... Yeah, but the movies kind of brought me back in. I have to say, the movies brought me back into the love of Deadpool, because I'm like, he is great. Yeah.
the same thing happens at New York Comic Con. I mean, they have Deadpool meetups, and you have Deadpool Bob Ross and Deadpool,
Yeah. As long as it's not the guys who want to come and try and act. I don't know. Oh, they just drove me crazy. Yeah. But yeah. All right. So here's I'm going to throw one out there as a random. We'll see how we do. We did our favorites. I'll just ask you for one. Who's your least favorite X-Men?
Ooh.
So I'm going to go with mine. I didn't even know he's still around. I don't know if he was still around for very long at all, but I hated Maggot. Like, Maggot was such a bad character. He had like these worm things, and he was just like, he just so did not in any way jibe with the X. He was such a 90s extreme guy, and it's like, oh, I hated him. I remember when he just showed up. That was when I stopped reading the X-Men. Maggot showed up in the X-Men, and I've been reading X-Men my whole life, and I was just like, no, I don't know. This is awful. It is so bad. It is just so bad. I hate Maggot. Oh, the worst.
Okay, my least favorite. Oh, man. I don't know. I've got to think about a least favorite, but possibly Banshee, and not because of the character himself, but because writers never know what to do with him. Like, this goes back to Claremont and Byrne.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, we can't deal with this guy. We're just going to write him out. He's going to go, bang Moira McTaggart now. And like, he's done. And yeah, that has been Banshee's story for the past 45 years, is writers don't know what to do with him for long term.
And visually, he has the stupidest power. He would literally scream into the ground and float on his screams.
Yes.
And like, it was such a, like it's great to have a flyer, but have a guy constantly going, ooh, and floating on his, oh yeah. I do like Banshee, but I agree with everything you've said. And I like him for potential more than anything else, but I don't think he's got
never potential.
Never lived up to his potential. Yeah.
In the best version of him is in Generation X when he's a teacher.
Yeah.
Because he gets to play off the White Queen, and they're such a good odd couple.
Yeah. Yep. I'll agree with that.
So, all right, Chad.
Hi, Chad.
Your worst X-Men.
With your vast knowledge of the X-Men.
Yeah.
So let's get a really deep cut coming here. I can see it coming.
I don't know if she's like my one I don't like the most, but it's probably one of the ones that most confuses me is Psylocke, because like, wasn't she at one point Betsy Braddock, and now she is Quanon, or
so
yes. There's a lot of tangled continuity there.
There is, yeah. I can happily untangle some of her continuity because I do like her. But the one thing that I found out also recently, did you know that her name is a pun?
Really?
Yes. Because she manipulates the psyche, so she is the Psylocke for the psyche.
Oh.
Yep. I had all this time of reading her, and I didn't realize that it was Psylocke, Psyche. That's her name. Her name is basically a bad pun. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. She is, though. She is a confusing mess. Like, she is. I always think of Psylocke. She's basically the Hawkman of the Marvel universe, which is such a bizarre, fucked up, messed up continuity with every writer doing different things. No one really knowing where she is. Where is she? Who is he? Who's Hawkman? Is he this guy from outer space? Is he a reincarnate? Why not both? And then we'll mix all this other stuff up until you have no.
Oh, he's a space cop.
Yeah, I have a hard time reading Hawkman for that same reason, because I'm like, which Hawkman is this? He's so messed up with so many different versions. But yeah, I can easily see that with Psylocke.
Totally.
Yeah. And now they're two different people. Now you've got Betsy Braddock and you've got Quanon, so you've got both. Why not both?
Best of both worlds, my friend.
Yep. That was another fun thing with ours, is that like I heard people say like, oh, you finally fixed Quanon's name because it wasn't Quanon. That is not true. Quanon with the W spelling is absolutely accurate, and our version in Ultimate X-Men is a similar sounding name but not the same. It's like the difference between a Chad and Thad or something like that, or or even like Chris and Chris. One's a CHRIS, one's a KRIS, but they're both accurate. So yeah.
Rock on. All right.
Okay.
Well, Zack Davisson of Ultimate X-Men fame and many other wonderful projects, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad we finally got this done. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been
All right.
some hit and miss.
Yep.
Chad, this was our bonus episode. We've got another episode coming tomorrow. Who are we talking to?
Tiffany Babb. She did the Comics Courier and has a new, I think it's the Comics Staple. So we're going to find out about that. I think it's, just like a newsletter where people in the industry are, write about, comics or some intellectual thing.
Love it.
Sounds
All right.
awesome. I love it. Yep. All right.
Well, until next time, do good things in the world because we need it. Support local everything. Get out there and just don't be a jerk. Thank you kindly, and we will see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.